Hi, this is Mike from Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To, and on today's video we'll be taking a look at the Aerocool Splinter Duo, a relatively cost-effective case with plenty of flexibility. Interested? Keep watching to find out more. Okay, so in today's video we'll be taking a look at the Aerocool Splinter Duo. This is from Aerocool and actually is very similar if you've seen some of the other videos we've done. This is basically reusing one of their existing chassis, and effectively what they've done in terms of, if you look at the Aero 1 Eclipse, essentially all they've done is changed over the front panel and possibly changed out the fans. Now the Duo in this name, for this particular one, the Splinter, is derived from the fact that we've got three Duo 12 120mm fans included in here, which are addressable RGB. We also get the usual stuff, so you get an addressable RGB controller and fan hub, and also you get the ability on there to plug in additional 5V addressable RGB peripherals, should you wish to, say if you've got a cooler or additional RGB strips, all that kind of good stuff. Or potentially you can just plug in more fans. There is a couple of extra headers spare on the RGB controller. Again, we'll take a look at that a little bit later on in the video. So Splinter Duo, this is somewhat of an oddball one. I wasn't entirely sure where they get the name Splinter. I'm guessing is because there is basically a split down the middle between the airflow and also the addressable RGB strip. Otherwise, I'm not entirely sure where they get the naming from, but it doesn't really matter. What matters is this case actually any good? Now, essentially that is going to come down to kind of one main thing, and that is going to be the price. Now, the original retail price for this is somewhere in the region of about £60 here in the UK, which I feel personally is a little bit too much for this particular chassis. Although, if you are a canny buyer, you may find this on Amazon.co.uk for somewhere in the region of about £38, which makes it certainly somewhat more palatable and somewhat more wallet friendly. So, if you're after that sort of thing, definitely keep a lookout. There will be affiliated links in the video description taking to Amazon in your particular region, and you may well find that it's actually a bargain. Alternatively, you can join our Discord chat server and go into the Bargains No chat room, and if it's on offer, you'll be sure we'll be posting it in there. So in today's video we'll go through, do a teardown of the case. Now there is actually a longer version of this video available, so if you want to see that, it'll be linked in the video description. It was part of our live stream, so it is a bit 18 plus. So there may be the odd occasional word in there which may be not so appreciated by younger viewers, but certainly if you want to take a look, you can do. We did all sorts of things like test fitting radiators, and now I feel that I have enough knowledge to kind of condense that into a slightly shorter format video. So let's start at the beginning. Obviously at the front panel here, we've got this nice mesh section, which actually, it doesn't look like it's going to be one that's going to have heavy airflow, but it does certainly seem to have enough ventilation there, so if you put some fans in there, it's going to work really well. The default configuration of this particular chassis as it comes out of the factory is a negative airflow setup. So we've got two fans on the top, we've got one fan on the rear, and everything else is designed as being an intake area, which actually suits it really well. There is also behind here a mesh filter as well, so if you do want to filter out some of the nasties in the air, you certainly can't do. Or if you want more airflow, then you can just take that filter out and get the extra airflow that will provide. If we take off the front panel, it's relatively straightforward to do, so we can just pull off the front and it just clips on. There is actually a cable which is attached to the addressable RGB hub, but from here, if we just swing this out of the way, you can see there is room behind here for three 120mm fans or two 140mm fans should you want to. Alternatively, if you want to put a radiator in, you can do. You can put the radiator behind the metal and put the fans in front, and it's still fine, doesn't impede on any of the addressable RGB going on in the front panel. We did do some testing on here. If you're using a Arctic radiator, which tends to be a little bit thicker, around about 36-37mm, then you won't be able to have the radiator and the fans behind the metal, so you'd have to have fans in front, radiator behind. If you're going with a more standard type setup, where you've got a 25mm radiator and 25mm fans, then you should be able to get that both behind again. If you want to do a push-pull, you could have radiator in the middle, fans in the front, and some fans on the back, and there's plenty of room to do that should you need to. Although I think realistically for this kind of more budget orientated case, most people probably won't go that extreme. Moving around to the side, so we have got a full-size tempered glass panel. It's actually a nice thick panel, 4mm thick, and it's held on with two screws, not captive ones, as you can see. That one's just escaped me. Hopefully this one won't. Something which won't escape is the glass itself, so it is actually held in pretty firmly, so if you take the screws out it won't just fall out. There are little clips in the front section which hold it in place, so just slide it back slightly and then you can remove the glass from the frame. The glass has a slight smoke tint to it, and also you've got some foam around the outside edges and metal front and back for actually latching into the frame. The actual latches, you can see there's little sections there, and those go into here and here, and that is what holds it all in place. And with the glass out of the way, we can take a further look inside, and it's actually pretty cavernous, despite the fact that it is actually quite a compact chassis. I'll put the measurements on the screen for you now. You can see there isn't a great deal of depth there, which is going to limit you somewhat for graphics cards. If you're not putting fans in the front, you can get away with up to about 325mm graphics card. If you are putting a fans or radiator here, obviously you're going to have to minus that off. If you're going for air cooling in this, then you'll be looking at 160mm, or they say 161, but yeah, I would say 160 is probably your cutoff point, give or take a little millimeter for motherboard heights, etc, etc. Most tower coolers do tend to be somewhere between the 145 and 160mm, so you should be fine, but obviously do check with the manufacturer of the cooler you're using to make sure it's going to physically fit. Inside here, we've got room for a full-size ATX motherboard, or micro ATX, or ITX if you wanted to. There are 7 push-outs on the back. Unfortunately, those are captive ones, so you kind of bend them out and then throw them away. And then if you put a graphics card in and take it out, you'd have to put some blanking plates in. Not the end of the world, but it would be nice to see removable plates. But it is what it is, I guess. At the bottom, we've got a fully shielded section on the bottom for the basement. Then you've got a ventilated area there, so you can, if you want to, you can attach another 2 fans on here. And then giving you a total of about 8 fans in here of 120mm should you want to. So 1 in the back, 120mm, which is already populated, 2 in the top section, which you can't quite see, but they are definitely in there. And then you get 3 120s up front, and potentially another 2 on the bottom if you want to give your graphics card a little bit of extra cooling. In terms of pass-throughs for when you're doing your build, you've got some nice big cutouts at the bottom there, passing through things like USB 3.0 cables, which tend to be a little bit more chunky, that sort of thing. But for HD audio, USB and front panel connections, no problems there at all. There's also a cutout at the bottom here. Again, like I said, if you're putting a radiator in and you're sticking it behind the metal, and also for fans for that matter, then there's plenty of room there for doing that. You will find if you're putting a 360mm radiator in here, you will need to remove the fans from it first of all to be able to slot it in there. There just physically isn't the room. Obviously, if you're going with a 280 or 240, it's going to be absolutely fine. It'll go straight in. On this section here, there's an option if you want to for mounting 2 SSDs. There's some cutouts there. Obviously, depending where your cable is going to come through from your power supply, that may interfere with that somewhat, so do bear that in mind. Although don't worry, there's plenty of room in the back to put SSDs and hard drives should you need to. Up in the top, there's lots of cutouts for passing through cables for RGB fans and also for radiators, etc. If you want to put one up in that ceiling section. Yep, really nice to see. The layout in there is pretty much as good as it gets in terms of budget cases. As you can possibly see already, there is the magnetic filter, which I've currently got on the back side. But if you wanted to, you can take that out, take the front panel off and put it on the front. So that'll give you a little bit of option there, depending where you want to put it. Realistically, I think for me personally, I probably would go without this. Again, depending on your airflow setup, you may need it, you may not. Moving around to the back, nothing particularly exciting here, although you can see on the top here where you've got that extra little bit of height there for mounting your radiators and fans in this top section if you want to. And again, that is all going to completely clear the motherboard, so you've got no issues with RGB RAM or anything like that, heat sinks. Nothing is going to interfere with your radiator unless you're using a really, really thick radiator and super thick fans. Moving down, you've got the 120mm fan there cut out, hexagonal mesh, which we like to see. I/O section, you've got your removable plates there, which obviously are going to be thrown away should you not need to use them. You've also got a slider there on a thumb screw, so yeah, not the most elaborate, but gets the job done and will hold your parts in place. At the bottom, you've got room for a power supply up to around about 165mm power supply, depending on your setup in the bottom. If you take out the drive cage, which is in there, you can pretty much put a power supply in there as big as you want to. But if you're leaving the cage intact, depending on your power supply, if it's modular or captive, then realistically about 165mm is what you want to be looking for. Moving around to the back, we can take a look at the back panel. So it is a very flat panel, nothing going on there much. A little bit of a fingerprint magnet, but not overly so. And it is all finished in this kind of nice satin matte black finish. So looking in the back, you can see there's a big punch out there. So gaining access to the back of your CPU cooler and punch outs for putting your cables through. A few punch outs as well for cable management purposes, all that kind of stuff. And also one of the stars of the show is the included addressable RGB controller. This is actually pretty cool. It does use their own proprietary 6-pin connections for the fans themselves. Again, if you want to pick up those, you can do. There's a variety of different Aerocool fans of various different shapes and sizes, which will physically fit into their hub. So you haven't got too many worries there, although you will have to stick to the Aerocool branding. Of course, if you want to, you can add in your own separate fans and plug them into your motherboard via PWM and 5V addressable RGB should you need to. And of course, on the end here, you've got 2 additional outputs. So if you want to keep the included setup and add to it, you can do with a standard 3-pin 5-volt addressable RGB header, of which there's 2. And of course with that you can still add on additional splitters or hubs to give you even more ports should you need them. The hub itself, normally when you get it out of the box, or at least out the packaging, it comes separately, so you do need to physically stick it actually in the case on a adhesive foam backing. You can put it wherever you want to. I've chosen to put it here, it just seems to make the most sense for my particular use case scenario. Looking at the cabling coming down through, so one of the cables is actually already purposed into the actual hub, so that's our reset switch. So you can choose to plug that in if you want to use this hub. If you don't want to, you can plug the reset switch into your motherboard as you would normally. You've also got 2 USB 3.0 connections on the normal connection, so it's nice to see. Obviously 2 USB 3.0s is pretty cool these days. You've also got your HD audio connection for plugging in for your front panel audio, and there's also the front I/O cables, so power switch, reset switch, etc., LEDs, all that kind of stuff. Coming off of the actual hub itself, so the hub does require power, so that is taken care of by a SATA cable, so you plug that in, that will power the fans and the hub itself, and also any additional addressable RGB stuff you plug in there. You've also got a 4-pin PWM header which plugs into your motherboard, so you plug that into a suitable fan header, and then you can control the fan speeds of the included Aerocool Duo 12s. And if you want to get some lighting going on for your motherboard, then you can use a standard 3-pin 5-volt addressable RGB header, which also has a spur, giving the 3-pin version which some Gigabyte boards use. Switching between the modes is very easy to do, so press and hold the reset switch and it will toggle between being controlled by the hub itself or being controlled by your motherboard, so yeah, very simple, very straightforward. Looking at the bottom, reasonable amount of room here. I like the fact they've done a half-height drive bay there. That's nice and easy to take out. There's a screw on the bottom which you're probably seeing from some B-roll earlier. Take the screw out and you just pull the cage forward, it comes out, it's all on rubber mounts, etc. So put your drive in the bottom. If you want to do 2 3.5-inch drives, you put one on the inside and you can screw one to the top. Screw holes there are easily accessible. Or if you want to put 2.5 on the top, 3.5 on the bottom, you can do. Or just remove it in its entirety. There's also this section here which is for your power supply, which unfortunately doesn't have any grommets on there or rubber padding to sort of soak up vibrations, that kind of stuff. So yeah, something you may want to add should you need to. So I think that's pretty much it for the back. Let's take a look at the bottom. So on the bottom you see we've got these plastic feet which raise the whole thing up around about 1.5 inches, so nice bit of airflow coming underneath. And also if you're planning to possibly use this on carpet, not that you should do, but you might just get away with it. Also there is a removable filter there for your power supply. Because obviously the mesh is on both sides, if you are putting this on carpet, you can turn the power supply the other way around so it draws in cooler air from inside the case. Not optimal, but you certainly can do that should you need to. And these all come off should you want to do any modifications, etc. And you can see there's some of the screws. That one there in the middle is the screw to remove the hard drive cage. So yeah, pretty straightforward stuff. You've got rubber pads on the bottom, or foam pads I should say. So those are good because they don't mark your desks, they just isolate it a little bit. So yeah, that's pretty good. Then we can take a look at the top section. So in the top we've got all of the fans included. Like I said before, there is a removable filter on there. So if you're having this in exhaust mode, you probably don't want to use this anyway because it's just going to impede airflow. You don't really want to filter air coming out. This is more designed for stopping things actually falling into the blades, etc. Moving towards the front, so we've got our I/O section. So you've got 2 USB 3.0s. You've got a separate mic and headset jack. You've also got some LEDs there, one for hard drive activity and one for power. And also you've got the reset button, which is currently repurposed to change the RGB. And you've got the nice clicky power button. Yeah, overall pretty decent. There's not really a great deal that you can dislike about this case in my personal opinion. It's a really nice layout. It's quite compact, so in terms of actual depth. So if you're putting this onto a desk and you don't have a great deal of room, you can still put it on there, have your cables come out the back, and it's not going to be kind of hanging off the front of your desk for slightly more compact workstations. So yeah, overall I think pretty decent. But what I really do like is the RGB lighting. So I'm going to put a power supply in this and we'll check out the RGB. Okay, so there we go. There is the RGB turned on. Just put a crude power supply in here just to get things powered up. And also I'm using my Noctua fan controller so we can take a listen to the fans. The fans at the moment are on their lowest speed, and the power supply we're using is actually considerably noisier than any of the fans at all, but I'll be quiet now so you can listen to what that's like. So, yeah, effectively silent. And if we ramp the fans up, you can definitely hear the movement of air in there, of which actually, yeah, there's quite a lot, especially coming obviously out the top, because This is set to be a negative airflow, so this is where we're going to be getting all of our air coming in through this grilled section at the bottom here and all through there. And actually the RGB, I think it looks really nice. There's always a problem with trying to capture RGB on camera in here, which never really looks as vivid and as bright as it actually does in real life, but it does look really good. I'm going to change the camera settings a little bit now so you can see what it actually looks like a little bit better, hopefully. So I've dimmed the ISO down a little bit just so you can see the fans a little bit better. And as you can see from the fact they are called the Duo fans, so actually on the blades you've got the section around the outside edge, which also you've got the bit in the middle as well, so on the central hub. So that is kind of where they get the Duo name from, rather than just being a standard setup. I think they actually look really cool. Relatively cost effective as well, so if you want to pack up an additional pack of 3, you can pick those up for somewhere around about £15 to £20, depending on where you're shopping. So not massively expensive, and the fact that you can just plug them into the hub at the back is pretty cool as well. I'm going to change the settings here. So this is the standard rainbow puke, and there are kinds of all jazzy settings on this RGB hub. It looks like it's broken, but it is actually like a flickering effect, and actually on camera it does, yeah, it does look pretty much identical, so it isn't a problem with the camera. This is actually what it looks like. Someone has actually chosen to program this, believe it or not. Anyway, so then you've got various versions of that. Then you've got fades into various colours, going for the red, yellow, green, into blues. The colours themselves actually are quite nice, quite vivid and quite bright, and the reds are really nice. Reds are another thing which don't come out on camera particularly well for some reason. I'm not entirely sure. If you want to get an idea of what the comparison is, if you look at the back, look at the Arctic fans in the background and also the RGB going on the deep cool, etc., and you can get an idea of what it's like. It's pretty decent and quite vivid. So again, you can go through all the different lighting styles. There's a pulsing rainbow puke, a strobe effect, which goes through various colours, and you've got the lighting styles which build up, which is quite different. The fact that you've got this big strip in the front actually gives you a lot of opportunity to be a little bit more creative, or at least have a slightly more creative thing going on rather than just your standard single colours or whatever. Although if you do want to have single colours, you certainly can do. Again, there's lots of different options on here for colour styles. So you've got your solid red, yellow, acid yellow, green, pale blue, dark blue, pink, and then you've got a white. The white is actually quite nice colouring to it. I quite like that. You've got your yellow, and then back through to rainbow puke, and I think that is, yeah, that is pretty much it. Press and hold the button on the top. Again, it flashes a couple of times, and then it will hand over control to the motherboard should you have one installed, or the RGB connection connected to another RGB source. Press again, and then it goes back to the last setting you use. So again, you can cycle it through and choose whichever one is suitable for you. So there you go. There is the Aerocool Splinter Duo. I should say as well, I didn't say at the beginning, but massive shout out to Ugly Bob for sending this one over to us. He picked it up at a particularly good price, I believe it was, somewhere in the region of about £38 when it was on offer on Amazon.co.uk. Again, I'll put some links in the video description so you can check this out for yourselves, and if you want to pick one up, obviously you certainly can do. Any comments or questions, then feel free to reach out and let us know. If you want to see the full video where we did the test installations with radiators in the top and also in the front, then do watch the live stream. I'll try and put the timestamps to relevant sections for you so you can check all that out. But yeah, overall, I'm pretty happy with it. I'm looking forward to building it, which we'll be doing very soon. So if you want to see how that goes, obviously click on the subscribe button and the chime notification. You'll be notified of future video releases. But for now, I've been Mike. This is Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To, and hopefully we'll catch you in the very next video. Thanks for watching.